So, in my contemplations over the last couple of days, I've been exploring thinking and knowing. And I want to just record a little bit about what I'm noticing. So, thinking, looking, just being with my experience of thinking, I notice that thoughts arise in the same way as perceptions arise, and they seem to arise in the same place, if you can call it a place, if I can call it a place. So, and I can't detect any difference between them. I like the activity of perceiving and the activity of thinking seem to be made of the same thing, if we could call it a thing. Uh, so I also notice if I hold a thought in my awareness and I remove from the thought any of the qualities of perceiving, like sight and sound, touch, feeling, body feeling. If I remove those, like even with like when I'm thinking a thought that's like language based, right? I'm hearing it, so it's a hearing thing, or maybe I'm seeing it, written on a page. But more often, my language thoughts are like I'm talking to myself, right? And I hear them as like a voice in my own head. Of course, it's not in my head. But when I remove all the qualities of perception from my thoughts, the thoughts disappear. If I take away everything that's seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, feeling, there's nothing left. There's nothing that's just a thought. There's always a perception tied to it. And so I'm working now on the hypothesis that thinking is a form of perception. And I am asking, okay, well, if if sight is the perception of light, and or seeing is the perception of light, and hearing is the perception of sound, what is thinking perceiving? What is the object of the activity of thinking? And that led me to knowing, because for a while I was toying with the idea that thinking is how we perceive knowing. And I was like, well, what's knowing? Okay, so let's talk about knowing. I cannot separate, as I look at perception, and all I have are my perceptions, right? And I've just classified thinking as a form of perception. So all I have are my perceptions. I can't separate, I find no boundary between, no edge between the perceiving, the perception of the perception, the awareness of the perception, and the knowing of it. Like all I have of perceptions, the only experience I have of perceiving is the knowing of it, and so again, since all I know of my existence is my perception, and all of that is my perception is my knowing of it, all there is the knowing. So from this, I have come to understand, just by observation, what the teachers have all been saying, which is all there is knowing. All there is, like, knowing is the stuff of which we are made. With when I And it's not just the stuff of which we are made, it's the stuff that it is the activity of the universe. What do I mean by that? Well, okay, so the difficulty with trying to understand knowing is that it's non-objective. It's not an object. I can't touch it. I cannot perceive it in the way that I am accustomed to perceiving objects. And so, oh, and I'm just noticing the blackberries. I had some of these in my hand. The blackberries on the bush just outside my door. There's a beautiful garden outside my door. The blackberries are just ripening so beautifully. They're so. So this perception, knowing, this is this. Let's just pretend it really exists for a second as a separate object. And I am eating it. If we then take all the objective qualities away from it, we realize, or I realize, this is the universe knowing the universe, right, through this taste perception and touch and all this stuff. And there's this experience of, yum. Which leads me to the universe, like, there's being, and then there's being knowing. So being is being, and then there's this activity of being, which is knowing. And being is knowing by consuming itself, like we consume ourselves. The universe consumes itself through perception. I am taking in the light. We're tasting, we're smelling, we're hearing, and it's all of this stuff. It's we're bringing it into ourselves, right? It's the universe bringing itself into itself, and like we give birth to ourselves, like we give birth to children, right? We take ourselves into ourselves, and then give birth to more of ourselves. Like knowing begets knowing. Like this I am the activity of knowing, and I am consuming to keep myself alive. This is eating, but I'm consuming myself to perpetuate knowing. We're making babies, which is us just like perpetuating more knowing. So that's knowing. And it's the stuff of which we're made.